Oh, hi guys. So, those of you who watched my video on how to apply a Danish oil finish probably realized that I promised I would show you how to apply a Tung oil finish as well. So I figured it would be a good idea for me to do that. This is the piece of wood that I had with the pyrography on it from the other oil video. So this is what I'm going to use. This already has Danish oil on it. So I'm also going to demonstrate that you can apply a Tung oil finish over a Danish oil finish if you choose to do so. I think it has a pretty nice effect. But a Tung oil finish also looks very nice on its own. It's kind of like the look of having poured honey over top of a piece of wood. It's got a nice reflectivity to it, and it really brings out the grain. It's a very nice finish. Also, it is an on the surface finish as opposed to an in the surface finish like Danish oil. So it's got a lot more protective properties to it. It actually glosses out quite nicely. It's really a full finish. So, that being said, let's get started. There are lots of ways you can do this. You can put it on with a brush. You can spray it on if you thin it with mineral spirits if you're into that. And I know I probably should be into that because I'm a spraying guy first and foremost, but this stuff I find that it's easier not to spray it. The first two coats of this you can put quite a bit on, and it's easier to put quite a bit on with something like, for example, a foam brush, which is what I'm going to use. And then from there, what I do, I put a coat on, let it dry almost all the way, then put another coat on, fairly heavy. Brush it out quite a bit. You want to brush out all the bubbles and stuff. This isn't like lacquer. It's not one of those things where you want to try and put it on in one stroke and then leave it alone because it'll string up. You don't have that problem with Tung oil. You can brush it out as much as you want. So I put the first coat on, brush it out, wait for it to dry most of the way, put another coat on, and then leave it for a day or two. At that point, just like when you're applying clear coat, you want to sand it down a bit, scuff it up, so that the next coats have something to adhere to, something to bite into for mechanical adhesion. And then for the last couple coats, I do about 4 total, the last couple I just use a rag and do a rub-on finish and put it on much lighter, and that fills in those scratches pretty nicely, and it usually turns out pretty good. When all's said and done, if you don't like the level of gloss or you've got some dust in it, it is possible to polish this stuff just like clear coat. It doesn't work quite as well, but it still looks pretty nice. So rather than trying to have you watch me do this from way over there, I'm going to bring the camera in closer because I've got no risk of anything getting on it, and you can watch how I apply this finish. Alright, so as I mentioned, the first couple coats go on fairly heavy. You can just pour some out into a plastic container, or I'm using a stainless steel container because I like to be able to clean it and reuse it after. As opposed to the brush, I'm using a foam brush because they're super cheap and they do a fairly nice job of this. And I just throw them out when I'm done. So a fairly heavy coat to begin with. I guess you can't really see that, but starting to get some gloss on the back there. You can see that I've got it over here, but I don't have it over here. I'm going to see if I can change the angle of this thing so you can see a little better what I'm doing. Alright, so that's a little better. You can see the gloss on some of it. Haven't applied it to the rest yet. So, let's continue, shall we? Brushing on a fairly heavy coat, and this stuff's got some odor to it. I'm in a very, very large room right now, actually in a warehouse, so I'm not worried about it. It diffuses into the air. But if you're doing this in an enclosed space, really if you're doing this indoors at all, you should be wearing a respirator, because you're not going to like the smell of this stuff, I don't think. Anyway, I know I said that you can brush this as much as you want. Really, what I meant is you should brush it quite a bit. Make sure your piece of wood is clean before you start, and then brush this out so that you can use the brush to break up all the bubbles. I'm just trying to get some into these into this image here because it's fairly deep. Anyway, brush it out quite a bit, and that way you use the brush to break up all the bubbles that are in there when you brush it out, and that should provide you with a better finish when all is said and done. That's also part of the reason why I'm doing this on a flat horizontal surface. I know I talked about this in one of my painting videos, putting it on a horizontal surface so that you don't have to fight gravity and worry about your paint running, and you can put it on a little heavier if you need to get an even coat. So very similar concept here. Flat surface, and that way I can put it on relatively heavy and not have to worry about it running. I don't want to drown the thing because that's not a good way to apply any finish, really. But still, this is heavier than I would be able to apply it by other methods, and heavier than I would be able to apply it if it weren't on a horizontal surface. And that should mean that I can get a better finish, a better build-up, and do it in less coats, even though 4 is still quite a few. This isn't one of those finishes that you can do in 1 or 2 coats and have a nice professional looking job. I'm gonna have oil all over my table. It's a good thing I got something on there protecting it. Anyway, I'm gonna call that the end of my first coat, and I'm gonna wait probably, based on today's temperature, about 3 hours, maybe, and maybe even less than that, maybe 2 hours. And then I'm going to put on a second coat the exact same way. I don't see any point in showing you that because, like I said, it's the exact same way. And then we'll come back to this in a couple days, or as early as tomorrow if I have an opportunity to do some filming tomorrow. And we'll sand it down a bit and get it prepared for the next coat.